Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Test Tube Plus for our final episode on breasts. Aw. This is episode 5 of 5. I'm here with my friend Amy Shira Title. Hey Amy.
Hey Trace.
What's up? Let's keep talking about boobies.
Boobs.
So, breasts are pretty fantastic. So far we've talked about how they're made, we've talked about how they're, part of our culture, part of our society, and we've even talked about breast cancer, which is a little bit of a downer. But it's also important because it happens to so many people. Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about breasts over time, because every culture has talked about breasts in some way. So I want to start with Roman historian Tacitus. Have you read Tacitus's book?
I have not.
He wrote a book called Germania. It's 98 BC. Put it on your list. Okay. It's pretty interesting. And he wrote about breasts of Germans, because that's what this book was about. It was an observation of German culture, which was a set of tribes in the middle of Europe. So this illustrates that none of the Germans in this book that he talked about, 98 BC, remember, they never wore shirts unless they were in battle. Neither the males nor the females were wearing shirts. They were always topless. And this is actually the earliest written human reference to talking about or noticing breasts on women. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read you a quote. I think you're going to like it. You ready?
Me.
You ready?
Yep.
In battle, when a German line was wavering on the point of giving way, the women rallied it, urgently entreating the men to fight on, baring their breasts and crying out that their captivity was at hand. Captivity for their women was a thing the men abhor far more than for themselves. So they were literally out there fighting for boobies.
Yep, that's
amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really, really cool. 2,000 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, and there are other references to nipples from more recently. In the Viking saga, The People of Laxerdal, which was written around 900 to 1000 CE, it says that if a man wears a low-cut shirt that exposes his nipples, he is perceived as feminine, and that is grounds for divorce.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're going to wear a tank top again.
Never show the nipple.
This seems like a bad idea. The University of Warwick did a study that showed that queens and prostitutes showed their breasts in the media of the 1600s. Queens did it. They weren't all like, oh, I'm too queeny, I can't do that. They were like, here my boobie is. And it titillated the public, and they did it for the press because the exposure of a single breast in portraits and prints, it was common among court ladies. And a historian, Angela McShane Jones from the University of Warwick, found that in the 1600s, it was fairly commonplace for women to bare their breasts in public, which I think is very interesting considering when people think of the 1600s and movies portray it, they're not.
You think of austerity, you think of the upper class was austere and the lower class was just too poor, and you really don't see a lot of toplessness in movies set in the 1600s.
No, but apparently, according to their findings, the fashions were initiated by court members and queens and then replicated by ordinary women and common prostitutes. In 17th century fashion, rather than demeaning women, it was considered empowering to show off your breasts because extremely low-cut dresses were designed to encourage men to look but not touch. It empowered women to use their sexuality out in public. That is amazing.
That's pretty impressive for the 17th century. I did not know that, and I think that's brilliant.
I think it's great. Are you going to follow 17th century fashions?
I might not. Maybe on the right, like French beach.
Oh yeah, see that's a whole different thing actually. That's super interesting.
But it's interesting, especially because super empowering bisexuality in the 17th century. Let's backtrack, not in time, but in progress, and talk about Victorian England.
So we're going forward in time by a couple hundred years to Victorian England, who were super prudy.
Yeah, super prudy.
Needless to say, in Victorian England, upper-class women did not show off their breasticles.
No, it was only lower-class women that ever bore their breasts.
Yeah. In fact, upper-class women would hire a wet nurse as opposed to show off a breast because it wouldn't be considered acceptable to breastfeed her own children because you might be able to catch a glimpse of her breast. And that's not cool.
Oh, imagine.
Yeah, and we kind of still have that today here in the West.
Breasts are still weirdly taboo. And it's, because we talked about earlier, we have breasts for food, for feeding young. And it's a little bit nuts that it's so taboo still.
Yeah, it's very strange, but it's probably part of the Victorian mentalities, carrying forward. In the Americas, the taboo was probably introduced with Christian missionaries in the 16th century, and that, of course, continued into the 20th century. While in Northern European cultures, it started with Christianity moving in the early medieval time periods, and then modesty evolved, and women were meant to be virginal for their husbands, and they were for their husbands alone, to keep chaste and make sure that their sexuality was something that only their husband experienced, and to be too sexual you would get hysterics and shame and harlotry.
Yes.
And all of those really great words, but horrible concepts.
Yes, God forbid you become a harlot.
Oh my goodness.
But this is kind of changing. We're kind of getting a little bit better. We're kind of undoing the horrible sort of, the high-necked fashion of the 1900s, 1910s. Necklines are getting lower, and it's kind of becoming a little bit, not quite 1600s level of, empowered by sexuality, but we're getting back to kind of reclaiming our bodies for ourselves and looking and not touching, hopefully.
I feel like after talking about breasts for the last hour, I'm more like, girl, you do you. Bury your breasts. Do what you got to do, Like, breasts are a part of us. We're not going to lose them anytime soon. They're not evolving away. We should celebrate them, We all have them, and men can walk around topless anywhere they want, but women can't necessarily do that. I mean, there's a lot of movements online for women who try and show their breasts, and then their pictures are flagged as indecent. Right. And, toplessness is a very strange concept that half of humanity is allowed and the other half is not. When you think of breasts as just part of every human. It's hard to kind of justify.
Yeah, if you think about it as the exact same thing, why are yours different than mine, really?
Yeah.
But there are some places that will allow women, if they so choose, to go topless. It's not very common in the U.S. Only New York and Maine actually is it legal for women to be topless, although you can check online by searching your town, the municipality, and the word nudity to see if they allow it.
That's true, because a lot of it is local ordinances and bans that are things that are very hyper-local levels.
Yes.
In fact, most states here in the U.S. Do not have laws surrounding this. They have more local ordinances. However, in your native land of Canada, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia all have laws allowing toplessness.
Yeah, you can walk down the street topless completely legally in my hometown of Toronto.
That was a high five for those listening at home. And there are, of course, also nude and topless beaches scattered around the world. You mentioned France earlier. It was famously known for a long time for having nude beaches. Here in San Francisco, we have some. Not a lot of topless women on them, being that it's San Francisco, but there are a lot of bottomless people, which is interesting.
I saw my first ever nude man when I was 5 on a nude beach in Florida. I went past the sign and didn't notice it.
In some cultures, both people recognize that breasts are for both sexuality and also for feeding infants. And we're starting to realize that here in the United States and in the West in general. And I think that is a fantastic movement. And obviously, everybody's got breasts. Men have them, women have them. We didn't really get into a lot of male breast development, but that can happen as well. And that's, a side effect of a number of different hormonal conditions, as well as dietary conditions can cause all sorts of different things like that. So it's super interesting. Breasts are cool. Let us know in the comments, what the laws are in your hometown. Go ahead and search that and tell us about it, and we can talk about it down in the comments. And also, if you're a lady commenter, why don't you let us know if you would actually do that, even if it was legal.
I'm not sure I would, but I'm curious to know how many of you guys would.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, thanks for listening to this series on Test Tube Plus about breasts. We're going to come back soon with another series, and I'd like to thank my friend Amy Shira-Title for coming to talk to me about this.
Well, thanks so much for letting me come talk boobs with you.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was very cool. You can go find Amy on Twitter at AST Vintage Space. You can find me at Trace Dominguez. You can find the whole show at Test Tube. And you can subscribe here on YouTube, or you can find us over on iTunes if you want to listen to this whole thing as one big audio podcast. Feel your boobs, everybody. We'll see you next time on Test Tube Plus.